done. Shout out to King Cosmic in the Discord. And that's the reason you should also be joining the Discord. Anyway, I'm Pascal from Orangepixel. Let's talk about Residual, the game I've been working on for many months now, and still a couple of months to go, but let's talk about Residual after the intro. So last week's video I ended showing you a tiny little bit of a new character. I couldn't show it completely because it has about 80 frames of animation and I hadn't completed all of those. It's a lot of work. The next step is figuring out the best color combination. I like the purple and green one, but there's a lot of green on the planet and I don't want the character to just be lost in the background. So I need to figure out the best color scheme. That's what I'm doing right now. I did manage to complete a character select screen for Residual, so now if you start a new game, you'll get this lovely screen and you'll be able to pick one of the characters. And as you can see, there is room for more characters. But for now, 2 characters is more than enough, and you can just select which character you want, and the character you pick will be floating up while the other one does a neat little idle animation, or actually a couple of idle animations. Creating this character select screen was pretty simple because I got to reuse a bunch of stuff that's already in the game. These characters are effectively 2 player objects, and you could control them, you could move around if I didn't block it in this screen. So they now have all the functionality the normal player character has, except they don't do anything besides being idle or either floating up a little bit. So I didn't really have any idle animations for these characters, but I needed it for this screen. So I created a couple of idle animations and they are pretty much based on stuff that the player already does. Inspecting the floor is already an animation when you're analyzing stuff. So now it's an idle animation as well, usable in the character select screen. Same thing goes for grabbing your visor, which you do when you open your visor in the game, but it's a cool little movement that we can now use as an idle animation. A next logical step is to have these idle animations also play when you're not moving the character. I haven't actually added that yet, but after doing this character screen I decided that would be a fun and interesting thing to add, and maybe I can just add it right now. Yeah, let's add a little idle animation to the player character. Okay, that sort of works, and it's pretty simple. It's just a little variable that increases, but as soon as the player does anything like press any button or action button or whatever, or interact with stuff, that counter is reset to 0. If that counter reaches a certain value based on time, we kick in an idle animation. Right now that idle animation just plays and immediately snaps back to a normal animation because the other code has to check where we are. But that's pretty much idle animations. It's not a lot of work, especially if you have all these animation frames already. It's pretty simple to add, and it adds a lot of fun and character to the character. And the way the animation system works is also pretty easy. We have all these little animation types and things, various animations for a ledge hanging, exiting a door or whatever, pushing stuff, swimming, sitting, smashing, grabbing, pulling, falling, a lot of different animations. And now we have these animations idles and an animation float, which is the floating you saw on the character select screen. And then over here we have the whole list of these animations. What we do here is we decide how many frames an animation has, how much time is between each frame, if it should loop or halt at the end, or various things, or loop back, which goes from frame 1 to frame last and then back to frame 1 again, and ping pong between frames. And then here we have all these frames that we want to use, and of course the frames are all these little pictures we have here. And for full completeness, these are all the animation frames we are adding to this game for the main character, which is a lot of animation frames. And there's still a couple of more frames I want to add because, well, just for cool stuff. So that's really how animation for characters work in the game. Now, I had some people ask me how I keep track of everything that's going on in Residual, because it's a pretty big game. There's a lot going on. How do you keep track of those things? Because as you might have seen in the devlogs, one week I'll be working on one big feature and a couple of small features, but the next week I'll be working on something completely different and tinkering with the features I did the week before. I'm all over the place in game development terms, and how do I keep track of these things? I mentioned before that I use Trello, and I still do. And on Trello you can create different boards for different kind of games. And this is the Residual board in full effect. These lists on the right are all the various release versions and all the changes and fixes I did for that certain version number. So these lists eventually I get rid of them, I archive them, they'll be gone. This is the list I'm currently working, and I'll be pushing an update for this after I record this video. These are the bugs, stuff that isn't working as it should and should be fixed. Then we have a list of key features. This is a new list. I haven't added it to smaller games, but for this game, I really need key features. These things on this list have to be done and completed and working before I can call it a release version. So as long as these things are here, we don't have a release version. But that's just a couple of features, grand and big features that make the game. Over here is our fun list of stuff that I pretty much come up when I'm playtesting or when I don't get around to finishing something. I just put little ideas and things in this list. And not everything in this list will be made, but most of these ideas will in some form or shape make it over to the version list at some point, and then hopefully they don't bounce back to the bugs list but just stay in the version list as a working feature. Then over here we have the scribbles and notes, and this is basically where I write down a bunch of things that I want to do and ideas, and just very rough stuff that maybe it won't make it into the game. Like this little list here has name ideas when I didn't have a name for the game just yet. Just something to take notes and what I want to add to it. And as you can see, a bunch of names passed the review. And we eventually ended on Residual. So that's how I keep track of it. The most stuff that happens during a week is stuff from the to-do list. And I'll be adding these features mostly when I figure out how I want to add these features. For example, the implement the end goal, fix the ship. That requires a bunch of other stuff to happen and be added to the game first before we can actually complete and finish this task. And save game is a pretty easy feature to add, but if I add it now while we have so much stuff changing every week, I'll probably be working on a lot of save game changes and fixes, so I'm just keeping it there until I'm very certain that the save game, the file that's being created, can be used week after week. So big features, small features, but if these things are not done, we won't have a release. And that's it for this week's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share the video, all that stuff that helps me grow this channel. And I'll see you next week for more Residual stuff, most likely, because as you just saw, there's a huge list of stuff I need to do and things I want to do, and that's just the stuff I've written down. Every time when I add something, other ideas pop up, and at some point we'll actually complete this game, but not next week, probably not this month, but soon, that's for sure. So thanks for watching, see you next week, bye.